All right. Well, how are you? Anyways,
I'm doing great, man. Really happy to be here. I've been looking forward to it. Been following your podcast for a while, so a lot of great guests, lots of guys I know. So I'm honored to be on the show with you.
yeah, I've had a couple people actually bring your name up and say you're somebody I should have on, somebody I should chat with. So I'm excited to get to know you and kind of pick your brain a little bit and kind of see what you're about.
Yeah, I'm excited too. So
Um,
interesting, just meeting you 5 minutes ago. So it's
yeah,
gonna be a fun night.
um, yeah. I guess if you just wanted to introduce yourself,
Sure.
let everyone know what you're about, maybe where you're from, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So my name's Brad Siroski, and I was born and raised in the Kenniston, Davidson, Saskatchewan area. Like I said to you earlier, you know Davidson. It's the halfway point between here and Regina, with the Tim Hortons and the A&W in the middle of the field. I kind of grew up in that area, and now I'm a certified mental health and addictions counselor, public speaker. I'm a best-selling author. I released a book in last January, actually on the 13th, which is my mom's birthday, which was kind of a pleasant surprise. It came out, and by the end of January, it was number one in the substance use and mental health categories, and I was super excited about that. Design programs, work as a casual at one of the recovery programs here in the city. Just a ton of stuff going on really in my business life. Travel to schools and companies and corporations all over, carrying a message around positive mental health and addictions awareness. And other than that, I'm a son and a brother and a husband and a father, and I love to write and write poetry. And I'm just basically a small town boy from Saskatchewan who's kind of struggled off and on his whole life with some form of mental health or addictions issues.
So what? So how did I guess? How long did you struggle? First off, and then kind of how did that lead to sobriety? How did that all?
Well, I think I had my first drink. I was 12 and a half.
Oh yeah,
I grew up,
that's small town.
yeah, small town Saskatchewan, right? So exactly like, and I grew up kind of in, the home that I grew up in, it was kind of the social central point of the community. So there's always a lot of people over and a lot of socializing. And there was, because it's small town Saskatchewan, there was always drinking. So the first time I went out and was introduced to alcohol, or the first time I went out with friends, I just thought this is what you do. You drink. So I brought booze with me and started drinking at 12. And man, by the time I was in like grade 12, it was a serious problem. I was drinking, smoking marijuana just about every day, and that carried on for a lot of years. I moved up to Saskatoon, got a job in a nightclub up here, and managed a nightclub for years, for about 13 years. And with the nightclub came heavier drugs and the party lifestyle, and kind of lived like a vampire for a lot of my life. I get to work at 11 in the morning and not get home till sometimes 4 in the morning.
Right.
So introduced to drugs like ecstasy and acid and all those heavier drugs and pills, and eventually cocaine and alcohol became the two major drugs I struggled with. And I struggled for a lot of years. I was introduced to cocaine at 24. 31, I had a heart attack from using too much cocaine and quit using substances for a while, but didn't really fix any of the problems in my life
Mm.
that were making me use the substances. So as soon as I got a clean bill of health, I basically went back to using the substances again. But I actually left the alcohol was the big problem for me. So I thought I'd just do a little bit of cocaine, but it's not a drug you usually do just a little bit of.
Right. Right.
So, and I had a serious cocaine problem from 24 to 31. Had a heart attack at that point. Like I said, doctor gave me a clean bill of health 2 years later, started using again. And it just kind of carried on in this vicious cycle. Um, Eventually I would have my daughter, and that was kind of the turning point in my life. There was a lot of stuff going on at that point. I was losing family members and friends, and my daughter's mom said she's going to take my little girl away. And I thought, if I don't quit using substances right now, I'm going to lose this child. And I'd always wanted to be a dad. So I reached out to a couple friends and reached out to my boss at work and told him I was struggling. And that was a tough thing for me to do, because even now it's tough to be vulnerable and to talk about mental health and addiction. So, but when I reached out to my boss, he basically saved my life. He said, like, we're proud of you for reaching out. It takes a big man to be vulnerable and to admit when they're wrong, and to kind of reach out and ask for help. And they helped me get into a treatment program. And that was, I went to that treatment program on August 21st of 2012. And that's 13 years ago. And I haven't touched a drop of alcohol or a drug ever since. So
Wow.
cleaned myself up, went back to my home community and kind of realized that for me, the alcohol and the drugs are just the tip of the iceberg. If I didn't deal with all the stuff underneath, the trauma and all the stuff I'd been through as a kid and the stress and the anxiety and the depression and all the mental health issues I had, I knew I was going to either fall back into using substances or replace them with something just as toxic. So for the last 13 years, I've just been on this journey to really work on my mental health and stay sober.
Mm. So where do you, from coming out of treatment and it being successful, where I guess a lot of people aren't so lucky, like why do you think you were able to kind of just stay on the right path when other people struggle so much and relapse and it takes them a couple of tries?
Well, that's an interesting question because the part of the story I left out is that leading up to that last treatment program I went to, in between 2011 and when I quit in 2000 mid 2012, I was in detox 11 times.
Mm,
Over the years, I went to my first treatment program at 19 years of age. I got 2 impaired driving charges and went to jail at 19 years of age. And following jail, they sent me to treatment. So I had my first treatment stay at 19. And
mm,
in between 19 and 37, when I finally quit using substances, I think I was in at least 6 or 7 different 28-day treatment programs, a couple 3-month treatment programs. I lost count to how many times I was in detox. I
right,
used to drink so much alcohol that I would have seizures and bit halfway through the bottom of my tongue having a seizure. And so every time I stopped using, if I didn't go to detox, I'd get so sick that I just basically had to. It was either detox or the hospital. So there was a long journey leading up to that final treatment program, which I went through, which is a program called Teen Challenge. It's actually a year-long program here in Saskatchewan, and it's got a really deceiving name because it's not for teens, it's for adults actually. But I went through that program and stayed in it for a year, and then the sobriety finally kind of took. But
mm,
like I said, I had to really work on the mental health aspects and all the things that I was using the substances for to cope with, to mask, to cover up, right? So when I got out, that's when I really started kind of working on making sure I didn't fall back into those bad habits.
right. So what are, when you talk about the mental health side, what are some of the things you learned about yourself?
Well, I know that I've had a ton of trauma in my life, right? So near fatal car accidents, I've lived through cancer, I overdosed. I mean, I was in the hospital for overdoses. I don't even know how many times. Tons of trauma, right? Um, and so there was all, and I think you see like a lot of people say like addiction is rooted in trauma,
Right.
but it's rooted in a lot of other things, or at least was for me, anyways. So I grew up in a environment where there's a lot of substances being alcohol primarily being used. So that was a big thing for me that I had to kind of work through. I also have had major stress and anxiety and a fairly serious depressive disorder since I was a kid. So there was all those things, and then self-worth and self-doubt and shame and all of those things just kind of piled up over the years. And it was easier for me to use substances at the time to cope with them than it was to actually stop and go, hey, like I got to look after this stuff. Like
Mm,
this is a problem for me. There's a bigger problem than just the alcohol and the drugs. There's all the stuff like it's like the roots of the tree or like
yeah.
the tip of the iceberg, and then all the stuff under the surface, like I said earlier, that I was struggling with. So when I started to sober up, I realized like I still have this stress, still have anxiety, I still have depression. I haven't ever dealt with trauma. I've never talked to anyone like a lot of men do, right? I just jammed all that shit down inside and just never talked to anybody about it because we're told that. We're told to man up and grow up and rub some dirt on it, and men don't cry. And you never want, I couldn't have sat down with my dad at 16 years of age and maybe I could have, but it was such a different time. I just don't think I could have sat down with him and said like, hey, I'm really struggling with all this stuff. It
Right.
was, there's a different message back then. So So it was really important for me to kind of start working through those things, right? Like starting to face some of those problems head on and to start talking about them.
Yeah, I think the one of the most common ones that you named there was shame. I find that there's so much shame in even like people I coach who aren't necessarily in they haven't hit rock bottom yet, or they're not in that bad of a situation yet, but there's always that little bit of shame somewhere, whether it's how much money they make, their job, raising their kid, like their family life, their all the like it always seems to go back to like shaming themselves.
Yeah.
It's not like they're not nice to themselves. I guess for you, like how did you battle that?
Well, I still am battling it. I think my biggest enemies that I still like. I think for me and a lot of people, most people, mental health. It's it's not a fight that you ever stop fighting,
Mm,
right? For me, the idea of the self worth and the self doubt and the shame, I still go through it. I just coach myself a little bit. I just always say to people, just get a little bit better every day, right?
mm,
So I try and tell myself all the time, like my inner dialogue, like you said this before, all these people they carry on the shame. The way I talk to myself inside, if I talk to other people like that, they'd punch me in the face,
right.
right? Like I call myself worthless and a failure, and I'm running this business now where I do all this addictions and mental health work and speaking and all that stuff, and it's going really well. But because I've carried this shame and this self worth and the self doubt around for so long, I have a tough time recognizing that things are going well. So I have to kind of tell myself every day. I've really changed the way I speak to myself and started doing like thought replacement and stuff like that and taking negative thoughts, and when I have a negative thought, replacing them with three positive thoughts.
Right.
So if I'm struggling with something and I feel like I'm not successful right now, one of the things that I tell myself is 13 years ago you were dying in your apartment in your addictions. The goals that you set coming out of treatments, you've already achieved and you've moved on to bigger goals. So change the narrative of the way we look at ourselves. I always say in my book right there, I said that don't forget to look in the rearview mirror every once in a while to see how far we've come. Because 12 years ago, my simple goal when I got out of treatment was to be able to talk to people and to help people, and while doing that, make enough money to support myself and my daughter at the time. And now I've got a wife and two stepkids, and not only have I done what I hoped for, but I've far surpassed that. So for me, a lot of the ideas of working through your self-doubt and your self-worth and your shame is to look how far you've come from where you once were. And I think we forget that. It's we often don't realize just how much we have accomplished.
Yeah. And I can tell by just like talking to you the 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 passion you have for helping people, and like while at the same time understanding that you're not perfect,
Yeah.
but that's like I think that is like part of the key, is like being able to relate to people, to be up there and speak, but also be up there being like, I'm still working on things too, like I'm not perfect. I'm not like this entity that's like, I figured it all out,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? I'm figuring it out. I'm helping people figure it out. There's going to be people ahead of me, people where I'm at, people below me, and we can all kind of help each other.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely, man. It's that's so important. And I think it's one of the things that has built me as a public speaker is that I can resonate with people because when I talk to people, they realize that I'm just this average guy who's
mhm,
still got his own struggles. And I don't go up on stage and try and trick anybody
right.
into them thinking that I'm better than them. I'm quite transparent with my struggles. I share a lot of my struggles. Do videos on social media all the time about mental health and addictions, And I have videos that I put out there in days when I'm struggling. I've shed tears on social media. I've been very open about my struggles with mental health and my good times and my bad times, because I feel like part of the stigma that's been built around mental health is that you should only talk when you're doing well. And
Mm.
we need to talk the most when we're not doing well, right?
Yes.
I've made a point of putting myself out there personally, and a lot of people don't want to, and that's okay. Everybody has to heal and have their own journey in their own way. But for me, putting my struggles out there helps other people who are struggling realize that they're not alone
Mm.
and that it's okay. And that, look at this guy who's a mental health and addictions counselor, and this guy who's a speaker and works at a treatment program. He doesn't have all his shit together, and it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. We all struggle. Life's hard, man. Like, nobody's got it all figured out. So I think that's part of the connection that I forge with people, is that they go, hey, what he said, that's a lot of that stuff I can relate to. I'm going through it in my own life, or I've been through those struggles, or, he's not saying that he's got it all figured out. And that, I think, when we're honest and transparent, that forms connection.
Yeah, and it honestly, like, meeting people like you, it like leads you to those talking circles, those sharing circles, those men's groups where now you can get different tools from different people. And like you said, like most people think when they're okay, they should be talking about it, you know, and when they're not, they shouldn't. But it's kind of like when you think of counseling or a men's group, it's kind of the opposite. People think they should only be in those positions when they're not doing good. Like I should only go to counseling when but like when you're doing fine, you should also go to counseling.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it's like you don't just work out when you're out of shape.
Yeah.
Even when you're in shape, you still have to maintain. You still have to work out to keep in shape. You know, and that's mentally too. When you're fine, when you're feeling good, when you're in a season of like gratitude and you're like feeling great, you should still be talking to people. You should still be in those sharing circles, in those men's groups, in those counseling sessions, even when you're feeling good. And then vice versa, you know, when you're speaking and helping people, you know, when you're feeling good or bad, you should be doing that.
Absolutely. I say all the time, when you stop doing the things that work, things stop working.
Right.
So if you have something that's working for you, whether that's counseling or men's groups or exercise or nature, the first thing I notice, and this book is kind of about the 10 things that I've put together in my journey to kind of build sobriety and mental wellness. And when I stopped doing those things stopped working for me.
Mm,
I took a job in as an outreach addictions counselor when I first got out of school, and it was a tough job. Like, I've never been I've always worked physical labor, but when I took this job, it was like mentally and emotionally and spiritually draining.
right.
And it was a whole different kind of tired for me. So I stopped doing the things that were working. I started eating like shit, and I stopped talking to my wife, and I stopped talking to my counselor, and I stopped exercising, and I stopped going outside for walks because I just felt so drained when I got home. And all of a sudden, it just all came to a head. And, I had been sober for a handful of years, and I just basically had like a mental breakdown. And I didn't just start drinking again, but the rest of my life was falling apart around me. And so, like you said, we have to continue to do these things that are working. And you don't do 20 curls
Yeah.
and end up with big biceps, right?
Right.
And you don't become in your profession, you don't go into the boxing ring for 10 minutes and skip for 20 minutes. And next thing you know, you're
You're the champ.
in a pro fight,
Yeah.
like, you got to keep doing the things that work. And that's what I
Yeah.
say, like addictions and recovery and mental health and life in general. It's just one constant. You just constantly keep getting yourself a little bit better and a little bit more prepared.
Mhm.
And I don't think I'm ever going to have it all figured out, but like I said, I just try and get a little bit better every day. And that makes my mental health a little bit better every day.
Right. I like to it's kind of like it's kind of like, you know, like when I think of like working out, because like, okay, one of the other coaches at the gym one time, he told me like your body can't recognize whether you're going through like a physical workout or a mental workout. Your body acts the same.
Right.
You get exhausted, you get drained, you get, whether you're getting torn down at work by a boss or a leader, or you're running 10K, like your body reacts the same way. You fall apart, you gotta sleep, you feel like garbage. And I feel like, just like when you bench press, you gotta build your capacity to handle it. That's what I visualize for mental. It's like you're just building your capacity to handle those hard moments, and it's like, sometimes when you're feeling good, you make the most progression. It's like
Absolutely.
you went hard for 2 months, you felt good for that 2 months, and you just built your capacity so that when something else comes up, you can maybe handle that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It's so also to add on to that idea, sometimes taking a break is the best thing you can do for your training, for your physical workouts, for your
Yes.
mental health. This I've being in the gym, not boxing and training that way, but lifting
Right.
and cardio work and stuff like that has been a huge part of my recovery. That's no secret to anybody. I advertise physical health all the time, as much as mental and emotional and spiritual health as well. And I when I this last year I started with a trainer and we started working towards really building mobility. And as we started working, I realized, hey, like I can, I was squatting quite a bit of weight. So we signed me up to do a powerlifting competition.
Oh, wicked.
And I started with a barbell. Like I started doing barbell squats and they were uncomfortable and I couldn't get to depth and I couldn't do any of that stuff. And 9 months later, I had three plates on each side. I think I maxed out at 367 or
Dang.
370 for a squat and 390 for a deadlift. But I
Nice.
look at my mental health the same way. You just slowly add plates on every day,
Right.
right? And in there, I also needed to take breaks.
Yeah.
I needed to give my body a chance to recover and to get back to where it needed to be so I could keep doing that. And I look at my mental health the same way. Sometimes we need to just take a break. Jim Carrey says, I love this quote by Jim Carrey. He was talking to his psychiatrist, and his psychiatrist said, Jim, you're depressed. And do you know what I prescribed for depression? He said, it's right in the word. You need deep rest.
Mm.
And that's what I think of when I think of training, when I think of that. Keep adding the plates on, keep building it up, bigger and bigger, more volume, more things that work for you till you need a break. And then give yourself the break you need and then keep going. And if you keep working like that, sure, you're going to have some downfalls. I went through an injury in the middle of it. I tweaked my knee and couldn't lift for 3 weeks. And that's the same with my mental health. Sometimes it just takes a dive. I've struggled with depression my whole life. And sometimes I just need to take a break and get that deep rest. And so like for me, the idea of physical fitness and mental health, they walk hand in hand. Like you can form so many comparisons. And I mentioned to you when we were talking earlier that I went through SIIT, the Indigenous school in town here, and I got introduced to all the ideas of like holistic well-being, like physical, mental, spiritual, emotional quadrants, and how you need to build those up. And that's been a huge part of my life.
Yes, sir.
Like I used
The
to,
medicine wheel.
yeah, like I used to, an elder told me one time, he said, you need to keep your quadrants up. And I said, I don't understand. And he goes, I'll make it simple for you. He said, just score them. He said, score yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally out of 10. And he said, if one's low, you got to build that one back up. How are you going to do that? So he gave me a bunch of examples on what you can put into those quadrants. Physical, you can eat and rest and exercise and get some fresh air. And mentally, you can talk to people and you can learn and you can do all those things. Because he said, if you watch, usually if one quadrant fails, the other ones aren't far behind unless you build it back up. And it really hit home with me because when my mental health starts to go, when I struggle with depression, the next thing that goes is my physical quadrant because I stop eating and I don't sleep properly and I stop having proper hygiene and I don't go out for fresh air. So we need to keep building those things up. And it's been so important for me to look at my whole my journey is a holistic approach to take care of all of it. And that's what I learned in SIT. That was one of the main things I learned there. And I learned so much, man. I learned
Yeah,
about
yeah,
culture, and I went to sweats and powwows and round dances and all these things. And I learned about a culture I knew nothing about, but
yeah.
it really opened my mind to the idea of mental health being more than just taking care of ourselves physically.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you remember where you went to sweat?
Yeah, I went to I don't remember the exact location, but I went with one of my uh, classmates, and I don't think he'd mind me sharing his name. His name was Howie Denemy,
Okay.
and he hosted the sweats. So I can't remember the exact location where we went to,
Right.
but yeah, it was very interesting. And another Nathan, another guy I went to school with, they kind of um, I'm not sure the proper word or terminology, but they were the ones who kind of put it on and spoke in the lodge and did all the prayers and all that stuff. And it was a crazy experience for
Yeah.
me. So
There's
so
if you ever want to do that again, there's just on Whitecap,
yep.
there's the Linklaters put one on once a month.
Yeah, I run into to Vern.
Yeah.
I used to run into him quite a bit. Like at some of the programs I ran, and I would like to go out to another sweat. I think I can't say this for certain, but I think he does sweats for the
Yeah, he does.
recovery program that I
Yeah.
work for.
Yeah, he does for a bunch.
Yeah,
I know him through boxing
yeah,
because he was a boxer
yeah.
back in the day, and so
So I think my instructor at SIT, her name was Janice Linklater, and I think they're cousins.
okay,
So I met Vern a couple times at SIT, and he came and spoke to our class. And yeah, he's just good guy.
that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's wicked. I know for it's cool that like you were given that piece of advice, to be aware of all the quadrants because I feel like what like a it's almost like a human like we have the habit of like one thing goes wrong and then we like cower and try and deal with that and forget about everything else. Like it's like we want to mitigate the hard
yeah,
and we just want to stop everything
yeah,
to deal with this one thing and then everything goes,
absolutely.
and then if you do figure that out, now you got to figure out everything else, like you stop going to the gym, maybe you aren't performing well at work, you're taking it out on your spouse, because of this one thing. It's like I'm going to mitigate everything, kind of hide and cower from all my responsibilities, and then everything kind of blows up, and that's when people internally blow up, right?
Yeah. When it comes back to that idea, like when you stop doing the things at work, things stop working, right? Like for me, one thing goes wrong, and then I'm like, oh, I don't feel like going to the gym today. And then because I don't go to the gym, I don't sleep as well that night. And then the
Mhm.
next day I take it out on my wife or I'm short with my wife or my kids. And then that affects my mental health. And it just becomes this great big snowball effect where if you just would have taken care of that first thing right off the bat and paid
Yeah.
attention to it rather than stepping back from it, it likely would have kind of not become the big mess that it was.
Right.
so
How how long ago did you write your book?
so I wrote it, I guess, just over a year ago now. I sat down. I had the idea for 9 years.
Okay.
So when I came out of the treatment program in 2013, I was there for a full year. I had a list of things I wanted to accomplish, and one of the first things was is I wanted to help other people. I had so many great people that helped me as I was going through treatment programs, so many addictions counselors and mental health workers and people that helped me with what I was going through, that I wanted to help people. And then I wanted to get set up for school. And I've always wanted to write a book, but I already had a book written. It was poetry. I write poetry, and I have some poetry in this book,
Okay.
and I'm going to release another poetry book really soon. I don't know when yet, but I'm hoping early next year. But this book kind of came together. I had a backbone for it, and I started writing a bunch of stuff. And initially it was going to be like a autobiographical book where I told my whole story. And to be honest, with all the substances I use, there's a lot of really blurry parts in my story. And a lot of the stuff, I didn't want to do a tell all because in order to do a tell all, you have to talk about some of the darker sides of certain people in your life, including yourself.
Right.
And a lot of times people read the dark stuff, but they don't read the really good stuff after. You know, like if I talk about the relationship that I had with my father, when I was young, we had a really conflicting relationship. And now we have this amazing relationship. But if I go in and talk about the conflicting stuff early on, people then remember that stuff and pass judgment as if it was still happening.
Mm,
And I'm not the same person, and my father's not the same person.
right.
So it really, I didn't want to dig up a bunch of stuff from past relationships, um, and kind of really piss anybody off.
Yeah.
So I decided I was going to write just a little chunk of my life. And then I decided not to do the autobiographical piece. So when I started putting it together last July, I thought, I want to talk to people about the things that I've done in my life that have really helped me stay sober and provide really better mental wellness for myself. So the first part, the intro is kind of a little bit of a story. And then I kind of ask how I got here and how can I not go back. And then I kind of tell people the things that I did to not go back to those bad habits and to work on my mental health so that I didn't. And so I started that in July, and I wrote it through the summer. The writing was actually probably for me the easiest part. I sat down every morning. I took public speaking is not super busy for me in the summertime. So I sat down every morning and I made myself write at least 30 or 40 minutes. And then in the afternoon, I would go back and read it and see what I liked and keep what I liked and kind of get rid of the rest. And over about 6 weeks, I wrote the whole book.
Really?
Yeah, but like I
The
said, I already
heck?
had the backbone, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I knew what I wanted to say. It was just a matter of saying it. And then it came to the edits and the spell checks and the proofing and all that stuff. And that's where stuff started to take a while. Like,
Right.
I'm a slow typer, so I dictated everything into my phone.
Yeah.
And then I went through and did my best with the grammar, but grammar wasn't one of my strong points in school.
Mhm.
So I worked with a couple different people. A friend of mine, Kara Howarth, really helped me do a lot of the piecing it together. Then we sent it off to the edits, and that was a long process. The cover and everything else came together real quick. I worked with a great lady named Jennifer Sparks, our, and she has a place called Stoke Publishing, and she really helped with the format and the layout and the cover and the ideas and the advertising and how to connect with Amazon and all those important things. She was amazing in that journey. She was super helpful. I highly recommend her to any beginning book writers. Just an awesome, amazing human being to deal with, always smiling and
Nice.
got good things to say. And her any kind of criticism that she gave you on the book was really important to take into consideration because she's worked with so many people.
Right.
So so I was done in September, and it took till January 13th for to go through all the rest of that stuff. So it took me about a month and a half to write, and then 6 months after to get it ready to put it out. And then it came out, and within 2 weeks, it hit the bestsellers list, and it just blew my mind because I just said, when people asked me when Jennifer actually said, "What do you want to do with this book?" And I said, "I want it to help people.
Mm,
I'd like to make my money back because there was a fairly
yeah.
but by the time you pay for all the copies of the books and the editing and all that stuff, there is a financial involvement." And then I jokingly said, I'd love to see it hit the bestsellers list. And within 2 weeks, it was number one. Like I said, I think in substance use and in the mental health platforms on Amazon.ca, which was huge.
That's amazing,
Yeah.
man. Well, congrats.
Yeah.
That's something to be proud of.
Yeah.
You know?
It's been crazy. So
And it must feel good knowing that you're helping a lot of people.
yeah, that's the key part, right? And I think if I'm completely honest, sometimes I lose sight of what's meant to be with the book and with the public speaking and with my counseling practice and even with the men's groups and stuff. And this world is so driven by money.
Yes.
Like and right now everything's so expensive, and it's financially it's tough for people. And sometimes I lose sight of what I started out doing this for, which was helping people. And I get caught up in the money aspect or how many books have sold or, you know, how many guys are in the men's group or whatever, right? But it's not.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a long time ago with speaking events and men's groups. The first men's group I ever did, I sat across from one guy. I set it up and one guy and the lady who was co-facilitating with me that week, we were the only ones that showed up. But it was one of my favorite men's groups ever because I sat and got to talk to a guy for an hour about the struggles he was having, and we shared a lot of stuff together, and we formed a connection. And I still keep in touch with that guy to this day. So we often lose sight of things, and that's why I think that I don't ever want the book to be something like how many copies has it sold. It's more how many people has it helped.
Mm. Is there something when you were writing that book that you learned about yourself?
Oh, there's a lot of things.
I bet.
Yeah, I learned that I'm really good at giving advice sometimes and not really good at following it.
Mm,
I'm a mental health and addictions counselor, and I have no problem sitting across from people and, saying, make sure you take time for self and give yourself a break when you need it. And self-care is so important. It's the building blocks. But I realized that and don't beat yourself up over things. Don't live in that world of self-worth and self-doubt. And I tell people that all the time. Thought replacement. I do all these, I have all these tips and tools and suggestions for people, but I have a real tough time putting them into my own life. So when I was writing the chapters of this book, at some points I almost had an imposter syndrome or felt like I was a hypocrite because I'm telling people to do this stuff and I'm not always doing it myself.
right.
So that was one of the first things I learned. And I learned that the second thing I learned, and I think this is really important to share with people, is that when you put something out like this, you're never going to please everybody. You know, I did my best to not paint any people in a negative light and to not put anything in there that would be controversial or that people could, say, oh, well, this is wrong or this is not right or you might hurt people with this. And the bottom line is that there's always going to be somebody who doesn't agree with what you say, doesn't support what you're doing, doesn't like the way you write or you put your ideas across. And for me, it was really important to learn that,
Right.
to learn that I don't have to please everybody, because there's been some people who told me that they didn't care for it and that it wasn't their cup of tea. And I have to focus on, because I tell people this all the time, going back to the earlier point, I tell people, don't focus on the one negative thing that people say, because we'll hear 99 good ones and one negative one will kind of kick us into a negative spiral. So I really had to focus on following that advice because, for every two people who said they didn't agree with it, 30 or 40 people reached out and said, hey man, thanks for writing it.
Mm-hmm.
This part spoke to me. My one of my good buddies bought a copy, I think just to support me, and he read it, and then he bought copies for each one of his kids and his wife and his mom and his dad. And he said, there's so many things that people can use in this book, man. It's thank you. And so I've been focusing a lot on not worrying about the naysayers as much and worrying more about the enjoying or at least being proud of the people that are getting help from it.
Mm-hmm. That's like that must be a good feeling to like from your friend there.
Yeah.
Somebody just buys it to support you, and then it kind of changes. Changes his life a little bit.
Yeah.
That's
It was, it's hard. I've struggled my whole life. And I think this goes back to shame and self-worth and self-doubt, right? Hearing compliments.
mm,
It's, when somebody compliments me, I kind of almost get like embarrassed and
yeah,
like,
yeah.
don't know what to say and kind of shy away from things. So, when he said, yeah, man, I read your book and there's a lot of great stuff in there and it really helped me. And I want to buy some copies to give to my kids and my wife. And I just like was almost in tears. Like,
Yeah,
thanks, man. Like and you just don't know what to say. Like, it's like, so I just said, thank you.
yeah,
Cause it's then, and the one thing that when he said that, that really hit home with me is that this is what you wrote the book for. You
right.
wanted to help people. That's what you said first and foremost. And there's a handful of people that you know that it's helped.
Yeah.
So even if it would have just helped 2 or 3 people, that would have been good enough. But
Right.
the feedback I get from all the people that, not all the people, but a large amount of the people that pick it up is like, this this one point or this one chapter really spoke to me. And that's it. That's what I wrote it for,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it can help 2 people or 10 people or 200 people, then it was worth the time and the money and even some of the, because it's not easy being vulnerable and putting yourself out there.
Right.
So it was worth it all. Like, just the feedback I've got has made it worthwhile.
Yeah. It's it's cool too because I think there's a lot of there's for whatever reason there's a lot of division in what healing is. You know, people love David Goggins, other people hate David Goggins. You
Yeah,
know, some people love this guy, hate this guy, you know, and it's like you need all of them
yeah,
because everyone's different. Everyone is so different. There's somebody who needs you,
right.
and there's somebody who will walk right by you. And both of those people are fine because not everyone is for everyone. Not everybody used the same tools to heal. Not everybody can communicate how to use those tools the same as everyone else can. And some people need David Goggins,
Yeah,
and other people need somebody who's a lot more polite than
yeah,
David
yeah.
Goggins,
You
you
know,
know?
like when you say that, I think of like David Goggins, maybe verse of like a Brene Brown or somebody that
Right.
writes all
Yes.
these softer and the idea of some of the Brene Brown books. People say they're more of a predominantly feminine approach to things, but I think that when I listen to David Goggins, I think, oh, a lot of that stuff I'll just leave it. But some of the stuff I can take, and I feel the same way about Brene Brown.
Hmm.
Like, and this is the to me, this is the idea of critical thinking and giving a lot of things an opportunity to speak into your life because you know my wife also listened to David Goggins, and it really pushed her through a hard time in her life because of the way he, like some of the stories he shares with the stuff, the mental fortitude he went through with the injuries he had going through SEALs training
Right.
and all that stuff. It really helped my wife go, some of the ideas, even what I think he says that we always have like an extra 40% in the tank or something. And my wife said
Yes.
she really took that message and put that into her life and in all aspects, training, with our kids, with everything. And so did I. That's the message that he gave, and so many others. I'm a huge
Yeah.
fan of
Yeah.
David Goggins, and there's a ton of great authors like that.
It's funny because that's that 40% rule is the rule that stands out to me with David Goggins.
Yeah, me
Like when
too.
I'm running and I'm feeling like tired, I'm like, I'm only at 40%.
Yeah,
I'm only at 40%.
I'm the same way in the gym, right? Like it's like I think I only got 2 reps left, and then I'm like, no, man,
Yeah.
I probably could battle through 3 or 4 more. Or I only got 10 minutes left in the elliptical. No, push it harder. 30 seconds
Hmm.
left in this plank can be a minute. You know, like all that stuff. And I really looked at took that the idea of putting that into the physical aspect and challenged myself mentally and emotionally with that stuff too. Like when I feel like I'm completely depleted, I often tell myself, you probably still got about 40% left,
Yeah.
you know, and it helps me to keep going.
And on the other side of that, like when you talk about Brene Brown being more feminine,
Yeah.
sometimes that's what you need.
Yeah.
Cause like one of the people that help me the most is my wife, and it is from a motherly feminine tone. And sometimes I just want that. I just want like to be taken care of. You
Yeah.
know, I'm like, I don't want to be yelled at. I want to be like, you know, like I sometimes I need that feminine,
Yeah.
you know?
I grew up in a household where my dad was a farmer and he was gone in, and he had a lot of cattle. So he was busy a lot of the time, especially in the summertime. Like he'd be gone. He worked 14, 16-hour days. And so I grew up in this household I was surrounded by 3 women all the time. And I got a lot of my dad's rigid, strong, manly traits, but I also got a lot of my mother's and sister's effeminate, caring, nurturing traits. And I couldn't be the person I am without both sides of that. And a
Mhm.
lot of times, like you said, the first I lean more towards, especially if I'm hurting, I lean more towards an effeminate message than a power through message.
Right.
So there's a place for all this stuff. There's a place for the you got 40% left, but there's also a place for give yourself a rest and it's okay to cry and, you know, give yourself a break and I need a hug and all that stuff, right? So I think there has to be a balance in everything in life.
Yes.
And without the David Goggins and you know, you need the Brene Brown as much as you need the David Goggins. So that's a really interesting kind of comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. One thing you mentioned, but you kind of brushed by it, that was that you battled cancer, you said?
Yeah.
Uh that must have been freaking tough.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about this, and I share this in a lot of the presentations I give, is that when I got diagnosed with cancer, I was about 3 years. Yeah, it would have been about 3 years because this year I was 10 years cancer free. So actually, I was only 2 years, a little over 2.5 years sober. And um, when I got cancer, I found out at a bizarre time because I applied to go to mental health school. I applied to actually go to the Sask Poly program in Prince Albert, and I had got accepted to the program, and I had filed for student loans, and at the same time, or I think my acceptance was based on my student loans or something like that. I can't remember, but anyways, it looked like I was going to get into the school, so I applied for student loans, and right around the same time, I got the message that I would be eligible for student loans. Within a day or so, I got diagnosed with cancer. I think it might have even been the same day,
Mm.
and it so obviously that changed kind of the trajectory of my life. But the battle with cancer, and I always say before I start into this conversation that my battle with cancer isn't like everybody else's battle with cancer. You know, like there's people that have passed away due to cancer. I've lost a lot of friends to cancer. But for me, my battle with cancer, because first of all, I had a good prognosis and I was in the best mental health of my life at that point in time. I was in the best physical health of my life. And I didn't believe that my higher power, that my creator had brought me through 22 years of addictions to wipe me out with cancer. I just wouldn't have it. So I
Mhm.
just kept this positive attitude and didn't believe like I honestly, Cole, had a lot of very few thoughts of this is going to be the end for me. I just had this firm belief that there was more. I was meant to do more than that. And that kind of helped me carry me through it. And when I look at my battle with cancer versus my battle with addiction, my battle with addiction was far tougher for me than my battle with cancer was. And like I said, that's not everybody's case.
Right.
But in my case, my battle and my journey with cancer was so different than my battle and journey with addictions. Like at, I talked a little bit earlier before about when I had a heart attack at the age of 31. And when I went to the hospital at 31 after I had my heart attack, the doctor asked me a handful of questions, same as they did when they found out I had cancer. And he said, "Do you use substances?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Like how many? Like how many drinks a day?" I said, "I don't know, like 40 ounces a day." And he was like, "What?" And then he said, "Anything else?" And I said, "Yeah, cocaine." And he said to me, "Well, you kind of brought this upon yourself." Now, nobody would ever say that if you were in the hospital with cancer.
Right.
Nobody said to me when I had cancer, "Well, you were a smoker and you had a bad lifestyle and you had bad eating habits and you had all these things." So for me, my battle with addictions, especially because of the stigmas and stereotypes and everything put around addictions, was far tougher than my battle with cancer. Because when I got cancer, everybody just wrapped around me and supported me. And when I got addictions, it was almost the opposite. When I struggled with my addictions, it was almost the opposite. It was almost like people went away from me. They didn't want to be near the addict. And really, they're both diseases, right? Right. One was a disease of my kidney and one was a disease of my mind
Mm.
and my soul. So so it was For me, the journey through cancer was sure, it was tough. There's hard parts. I had a surgery, a fairly invasive surgery. Like they cut me from my rib cage almost to my belly button and cut out half of my left kidney and took all the tumor with it. Luckily for me, and it started out as a small tumor and it was getting a little bigger. So we were lucky that we got in right away. Like there's a lot of things on my side, but that comes back to my higher power and all that stuff as well, right? So I was lucky enough to have a journey through cancer that I think was far less intrusive and almost, with lack of a better term, easier for me than my journey through addictions.
Mhm. Yeah, it's almost like you prepared yourself for that,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, and
It's
I
really
think
cool.
yeah, I think I think very much so. I think that when you go through some of the strongest, smartest people that I've ever met are people who are either battling addictions or have won the battle with addictions or are winning the battle with addictions and have come out the other side. Those are some of the hardest working, strongest people, most amazing people that I've ever met.
Yeah, me as well.
So,
Yep. Have you ever met Shaylin Fox?
not face to face.
Okay.
We've talked through social media. It's interesting because we were supposed to do on a Youth Matters event together, and with a friend of mine, Laura Lawrence. She does she takes speakers around to schools and educates youth, very similar to what I still do with my stuff. And me and Shaylin were supposed to go to the same event. And I can't remember if I was sick or if there was something going on in my family or what, but I wasn't able to go to that event. So I just narrowly missed him. But I follow what he does and I'm super,
Yeah.
he's super inspiring guy.
It's like you guys need to meet.
Yeah.
You
So
guys
do
need to
I.
go grab coffee or something
Yeah.
because I think you would be drawn to him. You guys have similar energy.
Yeah.
You guys are both very very positive, very just like good energy. You give off good energy. So I feel like you guys would do some cool things together.
Yeah, and it's funny you said that, and now it just reiterates the fact that I need to do it. As I've been saying, I golfed with a friend of mine named Brandon, and he said, have you met Shaylin? And I said, no. And he said, well, you got to meet him. And
Mhm.
I was going to send him a message that day to go for coffee. And then I got doing something else that, like, you can only get the same message so many
Yeah,
times
yeah.
before it's like gives you a little
Yeah.
smack across the face and is like, come on, man, do it.
Right.
So yeah, I think before I pull away here tonight, I'm going to message him and say, let's have a coffee, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. That's a
Yeah.
good idea. When you when you speak, there's a lot of vulnerability there. So for you, how do you balance like vulnerability with strength?
I don't think I have to balance it. I think vulnerability is strength.
Nice.
To me, it's like people used to say all the time, um, you know, don't don't cry.
Mm,
Don't talk about this. Real men don't do these things. And I challenge that narrative every day. I cry. I share my message with other people, which in turn gives them the strength to carry their message and to feel comfortable sharing their message, whether it's with one or others like I do. I always say you don't have to get in front of a stage of a whole bunch of people like me. You just have to find one person you trust and share. But
yes.
vulnerability to me equals strength. The strongest people that I see in the world are willing to be vulnerable. I have very vulnerable. I cry in front of my kids. I I'm also strong in front of my kids. I think that when you can show the people around you that there's no wrong emotions, only wrong ways to process emotions. That's one of the most
Right.
powerful things you can share with people. That
Yeah.
I go to schools and to presentation and do presentations, and I spoke at a country music festival of all things last year, and there's a bunch of grown men, a bunch of cowboys in that group, and they all cried afterwards. And that's what vulnerability does. It allows other people to heal. And when you heal from something, you're re-strengthening yourself. So vulnerability is providing strength, not taking it away.
Mm,
Like that's the way I look at it. Like,
100%.
yeah,
That is such a nice way to say that,
yeah, it's
you know?
just
Because even like for myself, because same with me, like I grew up the same way you did,
right.
push it down, be strong. And still, like, it's like I'm hardwired that way, where it's like I always go back to that. It's like, even though I know speaking and sharing and being vulnerable is a good thing, it's like sometimes it's hard for my hard wiring to let go of that olden, like that how I was brought up.
Yeah, it's a message that's been shared, especially with men, for as long as I can remember, for as long as my dad can remember.
Hmm.
That was the message that was passed on, and that's the reason that 75% of the people that take their own lives over the age of 20 are males,
Right.
because we've been told for so long that we got to jam all this shit down inside and never talk about it. And I always say it's like a balloon, right? If you blow enough air into a balloon, eventually it pops.
Yes.
If you put enough negativity enough negativity into your body, it's just like blowing that air into the balloon. Eventually, it comes out in some terrible way, shape, or form, right? Whether that's substance use or abuse or suicidality or mental health issues or whatever it looks like. If you can't jam all that shit down inside and never let it out, because it'll kill you. And I've watched it happen to too many people. Over the last 5 years, I've lost four male friends to suicides and overdoses because they were too afraid and too proud or too embarrassed or ashamed or whatever the word is you want to attach to it to talk to people. They had been told for so long to keep it inside that eventually the darkness just became too much. And we have to, in order to get that, we have to get that darkness out to allow some light in. So it's so important for me always to carry a message of vulnerability. And like I said, you don't have to go on a podcast, or you don't have to
Right.
stand on a stage in front of hundreds of people like I do and air your dirty laundry all across Saskatchewan or the world or whatever. You just have to find somebody else, that other half,
Mm,
that other person that completes you, and you have to talk to them. Whether that's a husband or a wife or a brother or sister or a mom or dad or a counselor or whatever, you need to get it out. And I always tell people, if you don't have that person, reach out to me.
right.
I have, you can find me at bradsiroski.com, and I respond to every single person that reaches out to me. I can't counsel everybody individually, but I help them connect with somebody who can, or make sure that they have somebody that they can talk to, or that make sure that that day in particular, especially, they don't feel like they're alone, because
Mhm.
nobody should have to struggle in silence or feel alone. I've been there. That's not a fun place to be, when you feel like you're the only one who's going through this. And a lot of people feel that way, unfortunately.
Is that kind of is that what you because you are a counselor?
Yeah.
You counsel as well. So is that like one of the main things you notice is that people think they're going through it by themselves, or they're the only one, or they're
I think that off maybe not the idea of they're necessarily the only one, because people are much more open about mental health now and addictions now, but the idea of a certain part of their struggle being their own. And it goes back to that shame thing, right? Like that they feel like they're the only person that's ever done this shameful act, when really
right.
at some point there's somebody else has done this uncertain, like it,
Yeah, yeah.
I have so many people when they sit there and they're like, they are tense and uncomfortable and feel like they can't tell me stuff, and then they finally open up, and to me it's like, oh well, okay, yeah, not downplaying it, but I've heard these things before. But people think there's so much shame attached to mental health that they think, well, I got to be the only person that ever did this. right? I've got to be the only person that's ever looked at pornography or did this or did that or was verbally abusive to my partner and it's like no, like
Yeah,
there
everyone.
everybody has their skeletons and their things they've went through and that's the idea of getting them out because if you pile all this stuff on top of each other. I used to do presentations. I actually did a diagram for the mental wellness course I went through that I used at an oil company in Alberta, where I talk about how we just pile. It's like you get an oil rig, you put it on the top, right? And you've got to drill through all this, and we pile stuff on top of each other, and then the stuff at the bottom, it becomes rock hard, and it's almost impossible to drill through. So we take all the shame and all these traumas, and we push them down, and we set stuff on top of them, and it makes them rock hard. And when we're trying to heal, we're trying to drill through all that stuff, and that stuff that we've pushed down and that we're so ashamed of, and all that stuff. It's really hard to break through that. But once you break through that, that's where you hit oil. That's where the pay dirt happens. That's where your life, the healing journey begins in your life is like the drilling through all that stuff that you think nobody else has ever done when really we're just carrying around that shame. Everybody's got their skeletons and their secrets and their things that they're not proud of. Everybody's made mistakes.
Hmm.
That's what it comes down to. The mistakes are just stepping stones on the way to success. There's not a Fortune 500 company in the world that wasn't built off of mistakes.
Right. It's
So,
like you gotta have that you gotta have a good relationship with failure,
mhm.
and just keep moving.
And that's been a hard thing for me is having a good relationship with failure and learning and going, okay, what's my lesson from this? I used to be like, I failed. Now I don't look at it as a failure. I say, okay, what can I learn from this? What can I learn from this mistake that I've made? And then you learn and you build off that and you continue to grow. Because, like I said, struggles and mistakes, they're just stepping stones on the way to success.
Yeah.
But we've been told for so long, and a lot of times when people carry around a lot of shame, you see a lot of your life as a failure. When there's people who would look at your life where it is right now, and that's what their goal is to get there. I have to remind myself that I'm 13 years sober,
Mm,
and that 14 years ago my goal was to just be sober.
yeah.
You know, so
And there's people looking at you who are 1 month sober,
yeah,
and they're like, "I want to be that
yeah.
someday."
Where when you think you're in such a bad place, I challenge you to look at some other people and go, hey, like that person would love to be in the place that I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's not the whole idea of I hear this a lot. Well, things could be worse. There's starving kids in Africa, that kind of thing. If you're having a shitty day, have a shitty day, right?
Right.
Just don't live in that because you're a product of what you surround yourself with.
Hmm.
So if you surround yourself with these thoughts, I always say, if you surround yourself with assholes, you're going to smell like shit.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
So if we surround ourselves with terrible thoughts and we're failures and we're this and we're that, that's where we're going to live. I see this with stress with people, right? We 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 ruminate, we build off of that stress and make more stress due to it, and then we basically just live in this world full of stress. We
Right.
can't live in these things. We can't live in our self-doubt and our shame and our self-worth and our stress and our anxiety and our depression. We need to have so much more. And we need to remind ourselves that, if we step back and step out of this, we can break these patterns.
Hmm. They're like you have to like almost treat them like visitors, like
Mhm.
these emotions, these feelings. They're just visiting. They're just sometimes here for seasons,
Yeah.
sometimes for hours, sometimes for a week, but it's not going to be for a lifetime. It's going to come, it's going to go, and some of them aren't real.
Yeah.
Some of them are phony,
Yeah.
and they're trying to trick you or trying to drag you down, and it's like it's it feels real.
Oh, yeah.
Like the feeling is real, but sometimes your mind's playing tricks on you. You know.
Absolutely. That's such a profound statement that they're just visitors. And that's how I look at my mental health now. It's not a permanent residence, right? If I get depressed, when I used to get depressed, sometimes I'd be down for weeks.
Mm.
And now I've figured out ways, especially I would consider my depression almost an unwanted guest, right? So now I've figured out ways to get rid of this unwanted guest quicker. I on the first day, maybe I force myself to get out of bed and have a shower and have a bite to eat and brush my teeth because those are things I never usually do if I'm depressed. But when I'm depressed, I don't feel sad or angry. I just feel switched off. Like it feels like somebody just turned me off. I
Right.
can't find any desire to get out of bed. I don't even turn the TV on. I don't want to be around my wife, my kids. I don't want to be around my dogs. I don't want to be around anybody. I'm just switched off. So, but now, and that's that unwanted visitor, right? So now I know that if I get up and go for a walk, and if even if it's just a block the first day and get out in the sunshine, even the rain, and brush my teeth and have a bite to eat, maybe that's good enough for that day.
Mm.
And then the next day, it's like, well, maybe I have 2 meals, get out of bed a little earlier, brush my teeth, have a shower, and I go for 3 blocks today or 4 blocks, and eventually that unwanted visitor starts to see its way out of my life.
Right.
And that's how we, kind of help ourselves with the mental health. And it's not that simple, right? Like I'm not saying that there's just a quick fix to everything because
Yeah. Yeah.
some people's mental health issues they're not an overnight fix or a week fix even, right? So, but we have to start and we have to challenge ourselves to start and we have to never give up once we start.
Mm-hmm.
I was speaking to you about Alan Kaler before, and he's got this. He says, I've heard him say it, and you probably heard it say it at that event you were at. We've made it through 100% of our struggle or our roughest days so far, and that's pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want to keep encouraging people is to get up, and even if it's just brush your teeth and and have a shower and a quick bite to eat that day, do that, but don't give up. And then the next day add a little bit more in and keep building and keep grinding and never quit fighting because man, I don't want to see anybody. I've lost too many people and I've seen too many people lose their battles with mental health. So I just want to encourage people to never ever give up on themselves, right? So
Yeah. So what is like what is resilience to you?
man, that's a good question. Well, resilience to me is just it is that simply that it's that never giving up. It's that the idea that once again we've made it through 100% of our battles up to this point, and not only that, but this that for me, what I have to remind myself to be resilient is that these struggles, these things that I've come across in life, they've all taught me something. I used to look at addictions like my addictions is a curse. And there's always that question that people ask, like, "What if you could go back and change anything? What would you change?" And I wouldn't change anything,
Mm.
you know, because I know that if I change stuff, then I'm not the person I am now.
Right.
And that's just the idea of putting one foot in front of another. And it comes the idea of resilience with me too, Cole, is coming back to that idea of the powerlifting and the adding a plate on every day,
Yes.
just a little bit of a little piece of armor or a plate on a dumbbell. So you're just getting a little stronger and continue to build and continue and give yourself the rest you need. Rest is part of resilience. There's so much in it, man. Like but never, ever, never effing give up on yourself. That's my biggest message to people.
Mm.
And if you continue to just get a little bit better every day, if you add one little weight on every day, or, you take an extra 30 steps every day, or you say an extra 5 positive affirmations every day, that's resilience. That's the keep fighting,
Mm.
and it's just that power that it's the David Goggins 40%, right?
Yeah.
We're not, we're not done yet. Keep going. That's resilience.
Well, we're at about an hour and 10 right now.
Okay, man.
um, but before we wrap it up, there's one more thing. A couple times in this chat, you've brought up spirituality, higher power, and I just wanted to pick your brain on that. Like,
Sure.
what is spirituality to you? Like, what does that look like from your point of view?
So for me personally, I do have a higher power And I think so. I went through a Christian recovery program,
Mm.
and I went through an Indigenous school, and the Christian recovery program talks about God or Jesus, and the Indigenous school talks about Creator. And to me, there's there's one God up here, and we as men just kind of made it made our own ideas about that God,
Right.
right? And so for me, I have a higher power, and that's what it looks like to me. But what I tell people all the time is people get so hung up on the idea of spirituality, right? About religion or culture or what it's got to be. And if you're a religious person, go to church and pray. And if you're a cultural person, go to ceremony, go to sweats, smudge, go to powwows, round dances, whatever it looks like, whatever your culture practices, right? If you're a religious or cultural person, do that. And if you're not, do what makes your soul happy. That's
Mm.
spirituality, man.
Yes.
Like nature, physical fitness, music. When I go to concerts and I hear music, the hair on my neck and my arms stands up. And I close my eyes and I feel that spirituality. That makes my soul happy. My dogs, my kids, going through the tough times with my kids and coming out the other side, that makes my soul happy. That's spirituality. It doesn't have to be about a higher power. If it is for you, great. If not, just do what makes your soul happy. That's spirituality to me.
That's amazing. That's very well said.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like whatever's moving you towards happiness,
Yeah.
right? That's
Like
that's
it
good. Simple and nice.
yeah, it's just for the longest time people have waged wars
Mm-hmm.
over the idea of religion and why spiritual like I said over and over again, spirituality is just what makes your soul happy. So, yeah.
Is there anything before we go that you wanted to touch on? Any shout outs, anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you like what I said, if you're looking for a speaker for your event, if you want to find my book, you can find it on amazon.ca. You can find me at bradsiroski.com. I'm a counselor, I'm a speaker. If you need help, and you don't have to come to my counseling services for help. If you need help connecting with somebody, I've worked in the mental health and addictions field for years. You got a question, reach out to me. I'll point you in the right direction. I'll give you the right email address. I'll give you the right phone number to phone. Nobody should have to. When I got into the world of started out trying to recover, I ran into so many closed doors and didn't know where to look. Nobody should have to go through that. So if you got questions, reach out to me. I'll I'll tell you what I know for sure. I'll gladly share everything I know with you. And as far as shout outs, man, shout out to my family, my family at home, my wife and my girls, to my friends, to my parents, to guys like Cody, who's up on your shelf there, and Alan Kaler, and yourself, who are carrying on conversations about everything from mental health to physical health to everything. The biggest power we have is our voice. And like I said earlier, if just talking to one person, great. But when you're using it for a platform like this and reaching other people, shout out to you, Cole, for doing this, man. Like this kind of stuff is unbelievable and it changes people's lives. So
Yes.
yeah, that's it, man. That's
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for coming and hanging out. Um, it was awesome getting to know you. Like honestly, I could tell how genuine you are about what you're doing, and I know you struggle with compliments, but man, you're doing awesome, man. You're doing some cool things. You're helping a lot of people, and you should be really proud of yourself.
Thanks, man. You too. I'm
Sure.
it's an honor to be on this podcast. I've watched a lot of the clips that you put out on social media and listened to some of the podcasts with some of my favorite guys you've had on here. And it's a great thing you're doing, man. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. That was good.
Right on, man.